What's up, YouTube? We just have a few things to discuss this week. Nothing really big going on in politics except for the whole Iran thing, where President Trump told that terrorist, you ain't gonna hurt no more Americans or any other body, including, Iraqis or Iranians, and he went over there and blew his ass up, that general, who totally deserved it. He does something good, and then the Democrats just can't give him an inch. No matter what he does, the better things he does, the Democrats are always, claiming he's horrible, so he can't win for nothing. Anyway, that's about all that's really going on in politics today, or this week anyway. The first thing I wanted to talk to you about is apparently right now they are filming, I guess you call it a G.I. Joe spinoff. They're calling it Snake Eyes, about the character's origins. I have one major problem with this film already. Snake Eyes is a white guy. I mean, it literally, the whole story around Snake Eyes is because he's white. He's an American. But they got an Asian playing Snake Eyes, which does not fit with the story whatsoever. So it makes no sense. It's just dumb and retarded. They're ruining the story. So my guess is this movie's going to fall flat because of that. We'll see. Anyways, moving on. I saw some news that they got a director named Noah Hawley. He's supposed to be working on a new Star Trek movie. He's thinking about bringing in a whole new cast to the movie. He doesn't really want to use most of the new cast, just the J.J. Abrams cast. I'm not sure I entirely agree with that. Plus, he wants to go back and start the whole thing over and start with the Wrath of Khan. He doesn't want to use the J.J. Abrams universe or timeline or version, which is good, because I totally hate the new version, period. The J.J. Abrams crap is retarded. They should never let that man touch film. He ruins everything he touches. He ruined Star Wars, and he's ruining Star Trek. But anyhow, I like the guy who plays Spock, the new Spock. I like the new Dr. McCoy. He's really good. The woman who played Lieutenant Uhura, she's alright, I guess. I still think they should have kept the fro and got rid of the long hair. The Chekhov kid, I wasn't real excited about. He just didn't come off as a Chekhov at all. They need someone who's Russian and who has the short hair, the bowl haircut. Plain and simple, to play Chekhov. Um, but for the most part, I didn't care for Sean Penn playing Scotty at all. I thought he did a horrible job. I don't dislike Sean Penn, but he's certainly not Scotty. He's not Scotty at all. No, not even close. Same thing with Chris Pine. I like Chris Pine as an actor in several of his films, but he is not. He wasn't James T. Kirk to me. He didn't fit the part at all. It just wasn't him. They need to change. They need to keep the guy who plays Spock, McCoy, and then go ahead and keep the Lieutenant Uhura chick. But they need to get rid of Chris Pine and Sean Penn as Scotty and Captain Kirk, and replace them, put somebody else in their place. But I'm kind of curious what he's going to do with this new Star Trek. Hopefully it's not too bad. Hopefully they do something right. Okay. I also just here recently, this past week, watched the new Maleficent, the sequel. I don't know why. They're literally trying to make, the most evil character in Disney, the biggest, baddest villain in Disney, and try to make her look like she's a good guy. And she's not. It was really, it was alright for a movie, but to try to make her like she's a good guy was just, it was terrible. It was bad. It just didn't, no, it don't work. I'm sorry. She's evil. Stop trying to make her look like she's a good guy, because she's not. Other than that, the movie was okay, I guess. Just wasn't my cup of tea, really. The last thing I want to talk about is I finally got done with it. I've been watching it for a few weeks now. I finally binge watched all there's 7 seasons of the old 80s show called Macgyver that starred Richard Dean Anderson. Now they have a new one that's been on for a couple of years or so, but it sucks. It's absolutely horrible. It's terrible. It doesn't even compare. It doesn't even really have that much to do with the old Macgyver at all. In fact, Richard Dean Anderson wouldn't even do a cameo for the show. It was that bad. But CBS keeps trying to push their woke agenda with everything they got. They're about as bad as Disney. But I did watch, I'd never seen the whole series. I watched several shows when I was younger, but I never did watch the entire show. So I went ahead and watched all 7 seasons. Now, one thing I noticed is they like to change the theme music almost every season. They changed it just a hair. They would change it just slightly. And if they would have just left the original theme, it would have been great. But they kept changing the theme, and it just, by the time the last season came by, it didn't sound like the theme song hardly anymore. It was just worse. wasn't as good. The other thing I noticed is I didn't realize how liberal the character Macgyver was. I was shocked. I can't, the further I watched it, you know, I was just like, my gosh, why is it like every other episode was an environmental issue, and he was an environmentalist activist and shit. Or it had something to do with, you know, the fact that he don't use guns. Everybody knows that Macgyver don't use guns. But it was like he was doing everything in his power to try to destroy guns. Almost every other episode. And there were a couple other liberal issues that were thrown in the mix. But it seemed to be, you know, every other episode was something like that. Something to do with some type of political liberal agenda. That was weird. I was like, man, I don't remember all that, but apparently that's the way it was. I liked that he had an arch nemesis, Murdoch. I liked the guy who played Murdoch. He did a pretty good job. And you know, they'd skip like 5 or 6 episodes before they'd have something to do with Murdoch again. You know, so there was a good time period before Murdoch would show it up again. But he was on there at least once or twice after the 2nd season. I didn't care so much for his buddy Jack. I didn't like that character at all, really. I thought he was really goofy and dumb. The guy who played Pete, I don't know, his other buddy Pete, you know, his best friend, which you see all through most of the show as boss, you know, he was okay, but I don't know, he came off kind of like sometimes he kind of seemed like he was, you know, great to have around. The other times you're just like, man, he's not good for nothing, really. He just seems to be kind of a pansy sometimes. And then other times, you know, he's helping him out, saving the day. So I didn't really get that character. So I wasn't too sure how I really felt about him. Otherwise, the show wasn't bad. You had some reoccurring. Cuba Gooding Jr. was on there a few times, and you had Terry Hatcher. She would come on several times. She was on the show several times. It was, like I said, it was an alright show. It wasn't bad. It was actually pretty good, even though it had several episodes that dealt with liberal activist opinions. But other than that, the show was actually pretty good. I liked it. You should definitely check it out. Alright. I guess we should get on to your B-movie reviews. Alright, movieaholics. Let's get on to your B-movie reviews. This week we're doing sci-fi. Back to sci-fi again. I picked a couple old classics to review. I try to watch movies and then give you reviews on them that are movies that I've never actually seen before. Maybe it might not be always, but I try to do that as much as possible. I've never seen these movies. I've heard about them, but never actually sat down and watched them. I'm just trying to give you honest reviews from an average Joe, you know. I'm not some paid critic or whatever. I wish I was, but I'm not. I just want people to know the truth and facts about these movies, and whether or not they're decent enough to watch or waste your time on. So, the first sci-fi movie we're going to talk about, there been a movie before it, and a movie after it that was very similar. There was a movie called Last Man on Earth, I think is what it was called, and it starred Vincent Price. It was black and white. And then the movie done after this movie was called I Am Legend with Will Smith, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. In that movie, the humanoids were like vampiric, like almost like vampires, and they were trying to kill him in the movie, and he was trying to find a cure throughout the whole entire movie. This one, it had basic similarities. It was based on this movie here. However, there were several things that were completely different. The story, for the most part, was completely different. This movie is called The Omega Man. It was done in 1971. It only made about $9 million at the box office. I guess it didn't take too well with most audiences back then. It's since become a cult classic. And I seem to find that quite often with a lot of your 70s or 60s or 70s flicks. It's like they didn't do so well back in the day, but then now they're cult classics, so everybody loves them. So it's kind of strange. This starred Charlton Heston and Rosalind Cash. I don't know much about her at all. Charlton Heston, he also starred in the original Planet of the Apes. I'm not a big fan of his. He always plays like this ass in every one of his movies. His character is always this big badass, you know, big badass John, you know. That's just the way he acts, and it's just annoying. So I've never been a real big fan of his. The way I picture him is like he's an alcoholic, you know, and he's talking crap all the time. That's the way I picture him, the way he is. It's just, he's not a fan of him. I'm not a fan. So anyways, most of the rest of the actors in the movie are decent. So the acting's decent. Just like I said, I'm not a big fan of Charlton Heston. Never have been. But the rest of the acting is alright. It's decent. Basically, there's been a kind of like a nuclear holocaust. There were some bombs dropped, but they contained a virus. It was a biological weapon, nuclear weapon or some shit. The virus pretty much kills off most of the planet, except for a few survivors. However, the survivors start succumbing to this virus, and it basically mutates them and turns them into mutants. They can't stand sunlight or any type of bright light, actually. They prefer the dark. Their skin starts turning like a real pale white. Their eyes change to like albino-like looking eyes. One man who was a reporter during the bombing, he becomes like their leader, which he starts calling themselves the family. There's a young group of kids, and you know, one young female, one black young female, which is Rosalind Cash, and who's in her late 20s, and an early 20-year-old who's he calls himself Dutch. They take the kids and they leave the group because they started off with them. For some reason, the young don't succumb to the effects of the virus until they get much older. Once they start getting closer to 30 or so, then they start to change. They eventually gain sores. All the mutants eventually gain sores on themselves, and they eventually die. They find out that Charlton Heston is still alive in the city. They know about him. They just stay clear of him. However, they realize he's the only one that doesn't seem to be changing into a mutant. So when Rosalind's brother starts to change, they try to seek Charlton Heston's help. The young guy Dutch knows a little bit of medical stuff because he was in the school. He was in medical school just before the bombing, but he's not a doctor yet. He never made that far. Charlton Heston helps take his blood and create a serum to help Rosalind Cash's brother. The brother, though, he thinks he should help the entire family, the mutants, calling themselves a family. So he goes to tell them that there's a cure now, so they want to go and destroy the cure because they don't want a cure. They like the way things are because they're destroying all the knowledge of how to make machines and blah blah blah, you know, trying to create this whole religion out of the machines are evil and all the knowledge. So they've been burning books and burning bodies and cleaning up the city. And that's why they've been attacking Charlton Heston every night, because he reminds them of what they used to be. And they don't want to go back. But the kids do. The kids want to be saved. But the adult mutants do not. Charlton Heston, the reason why he survives is he was working on a serum when everything went down, and he was in a helicopter getting ready to take it to the CDC when the helicopter crashed, and he gave himself the serum so he didn't become a mutant. The way the story ends is the black chick, she turns into a mutant, turns on Charlton Heston. They go in, the family destroys everything he has. He's able to pocket away a batch of the serum, but they destroy everything else, and then they kill him and leave him for dead. In the morning, the young man Dutch shows up with the kids. They were all going to go to the mountains. They find the black chick huddling underneath a robe, black robe, to protect her from the sunlight. And they find Charlton Heston. He's barely breathing. He hands him the serum and tells him to finish it. And then he dies. And then they grab the black chick and they take off to the mountains. That's the end of the movie. Like I said, the acting wasn't bad. It was a decent film for what it was back then. Don't expect a lot of action, because there's not a lot of action in this movie. It's more suspenseful, and other than that, it was a decent story, and the acting was great. It just a little slow. It wasn't fast paced. But it was a good movie. It was decent. I give it 2 thumbs up. It was a good sci-fi story. Check it out. The next movie I'm going to talk about, a lot of people think it's a Star Wars ripoff. But in actuality, it was actually done before Star Wars. The script and everything was done before Star Wars. They actually got the movie done before Star Wars, but they held it back a year so they could release it at the same time as Star Wars, so it could try to compete with it. Well, we know how all that went. There are two specific scenes in this movie that you could tell Star Wars took from them. I was actually shocked to see that. I was like, wow, that's Star Wars right there, you know. You just could tell they took that from them. They changed it a little bit, but just slightly. One scene is they're coming down on the bad guy space station, and they're shooting on the top layer of the space station, and you see flashes as the spaceship's going down through there on top of the space station. You see the flashes, making its run across the station, and you're like, wait a minute, that's you see that in Star Wars, right? And then the second scene they took from this movie, that's George Lucas took from this movie, which I was shocked to see, because I thought George Lucas is the one who invented the lightsaber, but guess what? He's not. There is a scene where one of the main characters, Anton or Anti or something like, I can't remember how they pronounced his name. Anyway, he pulls out this piece of gold metal and then flicks his wrist, and a lightsaber shoots out. He's got a lightsaber, and I was like, oh my gosh, I did not know that Roger Corman had the idea of a lightsaber before George Lucas. I was really shocked to see that. I never knew that. Anyways, I don't know where to begin with this movie. There were so many things wrong with it. The acting definitely was not good. It was pretty bad acting. I forced myself to watch this entire movie, and I'm surprised I stayed awake during the whole thing, because it was that bad. First of all, the stars. Oh my gosh. The stars looked like Christmas lights. They were all different colors: pink, red, blue, yellow, green. I was like, really? They made space look like a Christmas tree. And then when they'd show the ships or the space station, it would all be multicolored, and I'm like, really? Because of the lights, you can see the multicolored lights going on it. Oh, I'm sorry, I must have forgotten. This movie was done in 1978, but like I said, it wasn't released till 79 during Star Wars. Also, I couldn't find any box office, what it made at the box office. Obviously, it didn't do all that great. It starred Caroline Munro and Major Gortner, but it also had someone you'd probably definitely recognize. He's really young in this, but it also had David Hasselhoff. I was like, whoa, David Hasselhoff is in this? I was kind of surprised that he was in something like this. But anyways, like I said, the first problem was the Christmas light space. The second problem was the bad guy's space station. It looked like a flat palm with fingers on it, and it would open and close every now and then. Dumb. The bad guys' spaceships, fighters or whatever, looked like they were on like a line, that metal line where you push the wheel around on the metal line. It looked like that. They were following some type of line or something. It was just dumb looking. And apparently, there's a scene where they go to this Amazon planet, and these Amazons chase them off the planet, and they pretty much have the same spaceships as the Count, which is the main villain. There's a Count and a King. At the very beginning of the movie, and the props were terrible. Oh my gosh, they looked like they were cut out from cardboard or something. They even tried to make there's two smugglers. One's like an android or alien or something, and the other one's the female. Her name was like Stella Star or something like that. The android dude was like Auntie or something like that. But anyways, the hologram graphics they try to give him to play with some weird looking holographic images or whatever. It was so bad. It was terrible looking. Anyways, the costumes for this movie was also really bad. It looked like they took leather and spandex and mixed them together. The female, the main female in the movie, which they didn't show many females in this movie, just mainly her. She's all constantly wearing this skimpy ass outfit, which no woman's actually gonna wear. It looked retarded. And then when she's got to wear a full suit, if she's going out in the snow or something, they give her like this see-through suit. So it's like a clear plastic, you know, like where you pop the bubbles on the clear plastic. That's what it looked like. Her whole suit was like that, over that skimpy outfit, so you could still see the skimpy outfit. I was just like, come on. Anyways, the whole story is basically the king's son ends up going missing. At the very beginning of the movie, this robot and this other guy, they call him Thor or something like that. They capture the two smugglers, which is Auntie and Stella Star. But they come back and they release them, telling the king wants them to help find his son. He's gone missing. So this is their way out. So they go and head off to these planets that they were told the king's son was last seen at, or were supposed to have been at. The first planet they go to is some like Amazonian planet, and they get in a little bit of a tussle with these Amazons. Roger Corman uses some claymation crap for these. It looked like something from an old 60s like Jason and the Argonauts thing. They had this giant statue that came alive and tried to stomp on him and crap as they were trying to get out of the Amazon city or whatever. The Amazons were giving them chase, but they got away. And of course, you know, like I said before, the bad guys, the Amazon spaceships that chased them off the planet looked real familiar, like pretty much the same as the Count's spaceships. So they didn't waste not in this movie. But anyways, really cheesy. The little space shuttle they had was really cheesy too, that they were flying around in. It looked like it was made out of plastic or something, with you know, like PCP pipe or PCV. Can't even say it. PVCP pipe. You know, it was just, it looked dumb. Anyways, they go to another planet where there's a bunch of slavers or whatever of the Count's, and they find the king's son, which happens to be David Hasselhoff. He plays the king's son, and his name is Simon. And he has this weird, retarded looking mask that he puts on. It shoots all these laser beams out of the eye sockets, you know, at the slavers or whatever, so that they could get away. The Count shows up. He tells them that the place that they're at, which is deep underground, is has been rigged to blow. He set a trap for him or whatever. I mean, it's going to blow up the whole planet. This is where you get the lightsaber scene with two, again, claymation. They don't even look like robots. They look like little plastic guys with swords. Anyways, the anti-guy dies or whatever. And then they leave. Or they try to leave, but they don't know how they're going to get off the planet when the king shows up. Or just out of the blue, the king shows up. It says, "Don't worry, I wouldn't be the king if I had some power." And he shoots this ray beam at the planet, and he says it's a time freezer. We've got like 3 minutes to get off the planet, but it'll keep time from moving forward. Yeah, if they're gonna freeze the whole planet, wouldn't it freeze them too? I mean, it's just silly. Anyways, they get on the spaceship, the king's yacht, or whatever he wants to call it. Big giant gold spaceship. And they fly off. Well, the king decides they're going to have to stop the Count because he's come up with this new death ray or whatever. And they're going to have to stop him, kill him or whatever. So they head for his big space station, which again looks like a hand. And the spaceships for the king, they're all gold looking, you know, they're all gold plated or whatever. But you can tell that these are all little toys or whatever. It's that bad. Anyways, they have this big battle. The Count wins. And the king says, "What are we going to do? I can't think of anything." Of course, Stella Star, she comes up with this immaculate plan to ram her spaceship into the headquarters of this fucking Count, and then they're gonna blow it up. And the king goes, "Oh, you mean a star crash?" You know, and I was like, "Oh my god!" It's the title. I was like, "That's so dumb." They're calling it a star crash, just ramming a spaceship into it. You know, like this spaceship's gonna be able to blow up this whole gigantic. I mean, this thing is 30 times bigger than the spaceship. And they're going to use the spaceship to blow up the big ass space station. The Count space station. I'm like, okay, whatever. Now there's a scene where they're getting ready, just before they ram the space station. Stella and the robot decide they're going to jump out of the ship. And you know, there's a vacuum in space. You know, you go punching a hole in the outer hole, it's going to suck everything out. Not in this one. They just open the window and decide that they're going to jump on out the window. And they decide to pull a Princess Leia move, like she did in Last Jedi. And they just float through space until they get to a point where David Hasselhoff shows up in one of his father's ships and picks him up like nothing happened. A little tinkly do, you know. It was so dumb. So dumb. And that robot voice, that hick voice, I can't get over that. It was dumb, dumb, dumb. Anyways, they blow up the ship, stop the count, and that's the end of the movie. Everybody lives happily ever after. Oh my gosh, I definitely do not recommend this movie at all. It was, I can't even believe I actually watched the whole thing. It was so dumb. The acting was really not good at all. And the story was horrible. The effects was god awful. I'm telling you, you're not going to like this movie. Unless you want to watch it for nostalgia reasons. And just to see what I'm talking about. How they, George Lucas stole a couple of things off of him. And how cheesy they made this movie. It's funny. It's just hilarious. I was laughing so many times I couldn't help myself. It was just so pathetically dumb. Anyways, definitely 2 thumbs down unless you just want to laugh or something. It's terrible, terrible movie. I definitely do not recommend StarCrash at all. Anyways, that's all for this week. If you have any suggestions of some movies you would like me to review, if you know of any gems I might not have ever seen, please leave your suggestions down in the comments below, and I'll get to reviewing them as soon as I can, and I'll even give you a name drop. I hope you like this video. Until next week, I told you you'd be told the truth, and you've just been told.